Sunny Hostin had always worn her self-righteousness like a designer badge of honor. Her voice, her identity, her relentless commentary, each was crafted carefully, brick by brick, into a public persona designed to command moral authority and intellectual superiority. She didn't just share opinions on The View, she delivered them like divine proclamations, with all the conviction of someone who believed she was shaping the moral compass of America in real time. But then came the reckoning. It didn't come in the form of a scandal. It wasn't a hot mic, moment, or a leaked email. No, this fall from grace was far more poetic. It came in the form of genealogy. It all began innocently enough. Sunny, like many public figures, appeared on the PBS show Finding Your Roots. The show's concept is simple: explore celebrity ancestry, uncover hidden stories, and provide a deeper understanding of where people come from. For Sunny, the show's e-bake, producers did their job a little too well. What they discovered didn't bolster her brand of performative outrage, it dismantled it. On air, Sunny's face visibly shifted. The confident, articulate woman who often framed herself as a product of colonial oppression was now confronted with a different kind of legacy. Her European ancestors were slaveholders, not just bystanders, not victims, owners, beneficiaries. Participants in one of the darkest chapters in human history. The revelation was like a thunderclap echoing far beyond the studio. This wasn't just personal, it was public. And it wasn't just embarrassing, it was symbolic. A woman who had spent years lecturing America about privilege, about systemic injustice, about reparations, now had to face the uncomfortable truth that she wasn't just a descendant of the oppressed, she was also a descendant of the oppressors. Tomi Lahren. Tomi, never known for pulling punches, saw the moment and seized it with surgical precision. While Sunny scrambled to reframe, re-express, and re-establish her moral standing, Tomi calmly rolled out the receipts, not to shame Sunny for her ancestry, but to reveal the deeper irony of it all. Tomi pointed out a common left-wing tactic: using history selectively. Sunny had tried to weaponize history to argue that conservatives lacked compassion, lacked nuance, lacked understanding of what it means to be marginalized. But when her own family history contradicted her narrative, she was speechless. Tomi's point was simple: you don't get to rewrite the rules just because the past doesn't fit your politics. Then came the real twist, one that left even CNN viewers blinking in disbelief. A liberal activist tried to dig into Tomi's family history, hoping to uncover hypocrisy. The goal? To show that Tomi's ancestors were immigrants too, likely non-English speaking, and therefore suggest she was a hypocrite for advocating stricter immigration laws today. But the plan backfired. The records showed that Tomi's great-great-great-grandmother, after 41 years in the US, still spoke German. Her second great-grandmother didn't speak English after a decade in America. The intent behind this gotcha research was to say, see, your family was just like the immigrants you criticize. But Tomi never flinched. Instead, she agreed with the data. Yes, her ancestors didn't speak English right away. Yes, they spoke German and Norwegian. And yes, they still came legally, integrated, worked, built lives, and didn't expect handouts or immunity from the law. Rather than being exposed, Tomi used the revelation to double down on her original point. Legal immigration is not the same as illegal immigration. The two are apples and oranges, and pretending they're the same is dishonest at best and manipulative at worst. Meanwhile, Sunny, who had tried to wield history like a sword, now found herself wounded by it. She attempted to recover by leaning into her usual monologues, statements filled with words like systemic, racist, xenophobic, and the ever-reliable "as a woman of color." But the damage was done. The mirror had been held up, and the reflection was too clear to ignore. Sunny wasn't just inconsistent, she was exposed, and the internet noticed. Social media exploded. Memes, clips, reactions. People who had once been passive viewers were now dissecting Sunny's contradictions in real time. Her air of invincibility was gone. This wasn't a debate anymore. It was a public unraveling. But Tomi didn't gloat. She didn't scream or wave papers around. She simply presented facts and let Sunny trip over her own words. No theatrics, no rage, just quiet, relentless coherence. It was devastating. This was a masterclass in intellectual restraint. Tomi didn't need to insult. She didn't need to dramatize. She let Sunny's contradictions speak for themselves. And when paired with Sunny's prior rhetoric about privilege, oppression, reparations, and historical guilt, the irony became unbearable. Now, Sunny Hostin had built her brand as a truth teller, but when her own truth came knocking, she tried to slam the door shut. The problem was, it was already wide open, and Tomi Lahren walked right in. If Sunny Hostin thought the storm would pass quietly, she was sorely mistaken. You see, this wasn't just about one awkward ancestry reveal, it was about what that reveal represented, the unraveling of a persona meticulously built on moral superiority. For years, Sunny had positioned herself as the moral voice of reason, the educated conscience of daytime television. Her role on The View wasn't just to comment, it was to correct, to scold, to enlighten. But in that moment, all the carefully stacked talking points and prescripted virtue signaling crumbled like a Jenga tower built on contradictions. Tomi Lahren didn't need to scream. She didn't need to talk over anyone. She simply held up a mirror, and Sunny saw what she had spent her whole career pretending not to be: human, fallible, and politically selective when it suited her. Let's be honest, this wasn't the first time Sunny's logic had taken a beating, but it was the first time she couldn't outrun it. No identity preamble, no polished sigh, no "as a woman of color" could soften the blow of discovering that her family history looked a lot like the very system she claimed to fight against. And that's what made the moment so significant. Tomi then added salt to the wound, not by mocking, but by calmly laying out her stance. Supporting legal immigration is not racist. Opposing open borders is not xenophobic. Sunny Hostin tried to claw her way out of the pit, but it was already too late. The thing about performative outrage is that it runs on fuel: audience approval, controlled narratives, and the safety of a friendly stage. But when all that is stripped away, when you're left with nothing but your own inconsistencies echoing through the airwaves, you either own it or collapse beneath it. Sunny collapsed. The usual formula didn't work. She couldn't just shift the conversation to colonialism or white privilege. She couldn't simply utter lived experience and expect the debate to be over. She tried to pivot to victimhood, to imply that she too was blindsided by the information about her ancestors. But the damage wasn't the ancestry, it was the hypocrisy. And audiences saw it, loud and clear. For years, Sunny painted others as the ignorant ones. Those who disagreed were bigots, deniers, or in need of education. But in that moment, stripped of prepared notes, applause breaks, and curated outrage, she looked like every pundit she'd ever criticized: unprepared, defensive, and exposed. Meanwhile, Tomi didn't just let the facts sit there, she framed them. She connected the dots. She explained, calmly but firmly, why legal immigration, national sovereignty, and personal responsibility aren't concepts reserved for the far right. They're the backbone of any functioning society. When she used the door lock metaphor, again, viewers weren't just listening, they were nodding. "You lock your doors," Tomi said, "not because you hate the people outside, but because you love the people inside." In that one sentence, she did what Sunny had never managed to do. She explained a conservative belief with clarity, compassion, and common sense. It wasn't racist, it wasn't hateful, it was protective, reasonable, human. Sunny tried to paint this as xenophobic. She reached deep into her usual arsenal of activist buzzwords, but the timing was off. Her moral standing was already undercut. Every word now sounded less like a warning and more like a deflection. Viewers weren't buying what she was selling. Because how can you talk about systemic injustice when you've benefited from it in your own bloodline? How can you say others shouldn't have platforms while yours was built on selective morality? The collapse wasn't just intellectual, it was narrative. Sunny's entire persona had been crafted to represent the underrepresented. But now, the foundation was cracked. Viewers weren't seeing a fearless fighter for justice, they were seeing a woman scrambling to keep her storyline intact, even as history itself peeled it apart. Tomi, on the other hand, didn't need to rewrite anything. She simply stuck to what had always worked for her: facts, clarity, and unapologetic logic. When asked why she resonated with so many Americans, Tomi answered with unshakable confidence: "Because I speak like they do, I think like they do, and I seem to get it like they do." And she was right. Her appeal wasn't about echo chambers or extremist hot takes. It was about saying the quiet part out loud. the part so many Americans feel but are afraid to express for fear of being labeled. And she did it without malice, without performance, without the heavy sighs and Ivy League terminology. She let Sunny fall on her own. Every smirk, every head tilt, every polished phrase about the right side of history was thrown into Sharpie's relief against the truth of her own ancestry. And Tomi didn't just catch the contradiction, she exposed it, highlighted it, and let it speak for itself. And the silence that followed was deafening. No applause, no panel support, no damage control from producers. Just the echo of a crumbling narrative and a blinking host caught in the spotlight of her own undoing. But here's where things get even more revealing. Rather than humbling herself, Sunny returned to the same script. Undocumented immigrants aren't criminals, she argued. Calling them illegal is xenophobic. She doubled down on the semantics, as if changing the words could erase the facts, but the truth remained. Breaking a law is, by definition, illegal, and no amount of virtue signaling or thesaurus twisting could change that. Tomi's response? Brutal in its simplicity. If you don't want your family to be broken up, she said, don't cross the border illegally. It was a mic drop moment, not because it was aggressive, but because it was honest, practical, unfiltered. And in a world dominated by intellectual gymnastics and overproduced indignation, that honesty felt revolutionary. What made this takedown so devastating wasn't that Sunny had been wrong on a few facts. It was that her whole persona, her public credibility, had been tied to her moral infallibility. Once that was gone, everything else crumbled with it. Her lectures about democracy rang hollow. Her passion for justice now looked suspiciously like brand management. Her signature line, I just think we need to educate people, sounded condescending instead of wise. And most telling of all, she had no plan B. There was no graceful pivot, no clever rebuttal, just a broken teleprompter in her mind, and a series of facial expressions that screamed, "How dare you!" Meanwhile, Tomi never raised her voice. She didn't rely on ad hominem, attacks. She didn't even need to get the last word. She just stood there, calmly, and let Sunny continue unraveling on her own. It was like watching a statue melt, not from outside pressure, but from the internal heat of exposed contradictions. The moment didn't just belong to Tomi, it belonged to every viewer who had grown tired of being lectured by people who claim the moral high ground while building their careers on illusions. Sunny's fall wasn't a misstep. It was the logical conclusion of years spent preaching instead of listening, declaring instead of questioning, and branding instead of reflecting. And Tomi, she didn't have to destroy her opponent, she simply let the truth do it for her. The dust didn't settle quickly. In fact, it lingered. Because what happened between Sunny Hostin and Tomi Lahren wasn't just a viral moment. It was a mirror for every viewer, a mirror for every pundit, a mirror for a media ecosystem that thrives on polished outrage and selective storytelling. The media scrambled, unsure of how to spin the moment. Some attempted damage control, claiming Sunny was taken out of context. Others tried to pivot, blaming Tomi for being too aggressive, too personal, too smug. But the clips didn't lie. There was no shouting, no insults, no cheap theatrics, just Tomi calmly stating facts and Sunny slowly realizing that her public persona had been built on a foundation she never truly understood. That's what made the takedown so profound. Tomi didn't win with volume. She won with coherence, with unshakable logic, with restraint. She didn't need to interrupt. She didn't need to accuse. She just needed to wait. Wait for Sunny's contradictions to reach critical mass. And when they did, it was silent demolition. No tantrum. No dramatic exit. Just the subtle implosion of a brand that had relied for too long on unchecked superiority. What made it more fascinating was how universal the moment felt. This wasn't just about Sunny Hostin. It was about the broader trend of performative punditry. People who spend years crafting identities, leveraging history, and weaponizing personal narratives until the truth shines through the cracks. Sunny built a platform by pretending her experience was beyond question, beyond challenge. She portrayed herself as the embodiment of social justice, intelligent, cultured, and always on the right side of history. But history had a different idea. She learned what many pundits eventually do. You can't hide behind identity forever. Eventually, substance matters, consistency matters, Integrity matters. You can't just stack buzzwords like poker chips and hope no one calls your bluff. And that's why Tomi Lahren's approach was so effective. She didn't fight fire with fire. She let logic lead the way. She didn't drag Sunny. Sunny dragged herself, one contradictory sentence at a time. The takedown wasn't an explosion, it was erosion. Subtle, relentless erosion that chipped away at Sunny's credibility until there was nothing left but fragments of pre-written outrage. And what was left? A TV host without a plan, a persona without a foundation, a lecture without the lesson. This moment wasn't about left versus right, it was about real versus rehearsed. It was about what happens when someone who has lived in the safety of curated narratives is finally forced to face the raw, unedited truth. Sunny will recover, of course. There will be more View episodes, more panel discussions, more monologues, drenched in buzzwords and pre-approved applause. But the image has changed. The cracks are visible now. And the audience has seen behind the curtain, because once you've been caught polishing your moral badge with contradictions, it never quite shines the same way again. As for Tomi, she didn't just walk away with a win. She walked away having proven a point that cuts far deeper than immigration or ancestry. That truth doesn't fear investigation. That conviction must be grounded in consistency. And that when the facts are on your side, all you need to do is let them breathe. So what can we all take from this? That the real danger to democracy isn't disagreement, it's dishonesty. That platforms should be earned, not handed out based on identity checklists, and that maybe, just maybe, it's time we stop applauding the loudest voice in the room and start listening to the one that's making sense. Because in a world full of scripted outrage, the real rebellion is coherence. So the next time you hear someone begin with, "as a woman of color," or "let me educate you," pause for a moment. Ask yourself, is this truth or performance? Is this a conversation or a one-woman show? And remember, just because someone says the right things doesn't mean they're right. Sometimes, all it takes to reveal the truth is a mirror. And Tomi Lahren, she brought a full-length one. If you're tired of media elites using identity as a shield for bad arguments, if you think facts still matter in a world of viral outrage, and if you believe it's time we stop clapping for contradictions, then smash that like button so hard Sunny can hear it from her dressing room. Subscribe for more sharp takedowns, unapologetic truths, and fearless logic. And let us know in the comments. Whose hypocrisy should we expose next? Because this isn't just commentary, it's a cleanup mission, and we've only just begun.